Hi, I'm Life Coach Landry, and the topic is people who just aren't into us. Why we get stuck on them. Can you avoid being that person who's stuck on someone who just doesn't really want to talk to you? So here's the deal. If somebody doesn't text, call, or email, you might automatically assume when it's their turn they might not be into you, which typically isn't true. Maybe they're shy. Maybe they're more of a taker than a giver, which is normal that relationships have one or the other doing more of the work. Or maybe they're really not that into you, you're not the top priority, but signs usually follow that, right? If they get annoyed when you text or call or email, let's assume you don't overdo it. Then he or she is sending you a message. He doesn't or she doesn't feel like being around you or spending time with you. Or sexually is the only reason why they have a selfish need for you to be around. And past that, you're more of an annoyance. So why do we overanalyze the behavior of people and find interest where there is none? Are you in one of those relationships where you're saying to yourself, oh, I know they love me, even though they don't tell you, they don't kiss you passionately, they're not doing things that are really actually making you feel loved, but in your head, you're constantly saying, oh, I know they really love me. You might be saying that to yourself, and the reason you might be saying that's because you spend a lot of time with them, and when you're not around, you feel like there's this big void. That's not the same thing as them really loving you. A lot of times, people with bad self-esteem assume these things and want these things, so they make it so with people who really aren't into you. Now, remember, you can spend a lot of time with just about anybody and form some kind of bond, but that doesn't equal love. Time and bonding is not the same thing. There's a natural answer to this question, but it's only a partial answer. When something becomes scarce, we value it more. We value diamonds in part because they're rare. Likewise, when the contact with a beloved one becomes limited, we start valuing that their company, we start valuing their company more, and we might even value the beloved more, right? So it's one of those things, that I said was a partial answer, but the reason it cannot be the full answer is that we do not normally get upset and hurt if, say, a movie star doesn't seek our company or even rejects us if we try to get with them or her, yet their company is rare to most of us, right? So most of us have never met a movie star in person, and those of us who have are unlikely to be her, his or her buddy going forward. So right there, it tells you that scarcity contributes to how much we value our place and our activity with a person. Yet it does not even explain why we don't get the message when people reject us. How could we have evolved to obsess over a person who is not interested in us? How could that evolutionary part of us be even beneficial? It seems as if nature should have gotten rid of individuals or made the mind to adapt to individuals who isolate themselves in their caves, and their Stone Age man or woman left them for, new sex with a partner somewhere. They would certainly have been less likely to conceive and therefore less likely to carry on their genes to future generations, especially if it was kind of situation they found themselves in quite frequently. So, is our ability to cope with romantic rejection perhaps not an adaptive trait? Is it perhaps a byproduct of another beneficial trait? Or is it purely cultural with no anchor or genetic makeup and no ground in the history of evolution? I personally believe in our ability to cope is a mixture of reactions to cultural expectations as well as a healthy reaction to social rejection. Gone overboard? Pretty much. Let's begin with the latter. We know that groups and societies have been beneficial to our ancestors. It's important that very many of our non-human animal friends as well. Social rejection can mean being ostracized and left to fend for yourself. When you are left behind by a romantic partner, which in the case we'll focus on here, you're in some sense of being rejected. Of course, all rejection can hurt and make us do strange things, but having, say, your article or your journal or your book does not quite hurt in the same way and being rejected by the person you love. So if you write a book and someone's like, it doesn't work for me, it's not going to quite carry the same kind of pain. This is where cultural, factors into the picture. There's a societal expectation that we will end up with another person, a person we will live together, will eventually have children with, and perhaps get married to. Being with another person in a relationship is giving people an excuse to label us in a positive way, usually. You are now an us. You are invited to events together. You are treated as if you were a unit. more than an individual. Finding out that someone is in a relationship with another person is newsworthy within social circles. You announce to your friends, I'm getting married. You show off your ring. Your guy friends, you go out. Oh, we got to, take you on your last night of being a free man. And, everything that turns into a celebrity style moment. A label is removed. But when you're rejected, you're alone again. No longer invited to the same events as a default. Because of these societal expectations, your identity changes in a profound way. When you are rejected romantically, at least when the rejection comes in the form of a breakup from a long-term romantic relationship or marriage, which is probably the kind of rejection that hurts the most. Is it now newsworthy that you are no longer in a relationship, which isn't good news for you, but only for the person who broke up with you? Obviously, if it's what they wanted. You are left behind alone with the feelings that you cannot direct anywhere except outward in a stalker-like fashion or inward. And as we all know, the latter can lead to anxiety and depression and other forms of mental, just letdowns for yourself. But I can tell you right now that studies show it's better to grieve and be depressed and move through it than it is to go back to them. So if you're currently in a cycle with somebody where they have shown signs of being hot and cold with you, and you're still finding yourself in the situation with them, and let's say one weekend's the greatest weekend you've ever had, and the next weekend's like, they could care less whether they see you that weekend or not, that should tell you something, And I'm talking about relationships that are involved, not like you just started dating someone. Gaps are normal for couples within the first 6 months. But let's say you've known each other and you've been dating off and on over a year. Likely what's going on is your self-esteem is allowing you, the void of them not being there has gotten so strong that you want to be with them. It's not actual love that's going on. It's a cycle of when they're not there, it's rare. It makes you feel like you miss them and you want them. The problem is on the other side of that fence, that person is sending the signal that although they have selfish interest in you, maybe sexual, maybe just hanging out, maybe just your company, there's something wrong with the love pattern there, and your self-esteem is allowing it to continue. So is there any consolation if you're rejected romantically? Can you undo the cultural curse that has been placed on you? Probably not, or at least not easily. There will always be a stigma surrounding divorces and breakups, but you can choose not to let it affect you. This requires not letting other people define who you are. This is an easy thing to do if you really kind of get behind it. You don't have to identify with labels other people are assigned to you. Okay, suppose you are divorced. Unless you're under an oath in a court setting and are asked whether you have been married, you have the right not to refer to yourself as a divorced person. Heck, you don't even have to even refer to yourself as anything, really. You don't want to. Black, white, whatever you want to do. But you have the right, or you have a right to refer to yourself as a single, even if you were divorced, provided that you were not married, of course. Otherwise, you were lying. But it's one of those things where you really need to step back and think, if you are that person right now that's in a relationship with someone and you find yourself saying, I know they love me, and you're having to convince yourself that you know they love you because they're not outrightly saying it. It seems like sexualness is really the bond that holds you together rather than they truly value you and they miss you the hell out of you when you're not around. Then you are probably in a toxic relationship. And you just don't know it, and your self-esteem is allowing the void of them being gone to control your feelings. And you're trying to convince yourself they want you as much as you want them. You also don't need to identify with your life or with a former partner. You don't need to define yourself as the person who used to be married or the guy that used to be with so-and-so. Your past life with so-and-so is over. You have the right not to talk about it. You don't need to reply to questions concerning it. Saying that you and so-and-so are no longer together suffices a vast, in fact, it's none of your business is a real smart answer for most people. People don't really need to know about your past unless you feel like you're with a new person that you're trying to bond with, and it's helping you gain closeness towards each other about being more transparent about your life. But as far as the general public and general people you meet, they don't need to know that information. So you don't have to walk around with like a stigma or anything like that. So what's the bottom line here? Thinking of yourself in these terms is not a good way to move on, to get on with your life. You need to free yourself completely from the aspect of somebody who doesn't truly love you. And we all know who those people are, right? Because we feel more stressed out than we do happy with them. We have giant moments, giant peaks of everything's great, and then it bottoms out completely. Those are bad signs. And like I said, if you're having to tell yourself, if you're having to say, I know they love me, if they're not romantically kissing you, then they do not love you with the kind of love that has been known to be accepted as a loving relationship. So take those things away from that and make what you will. And if you're confused or you're in that stage where you're kind of trying to find out if that's what you have, are you stuck on somebody who's just not that into you, but you refuse to accept it, even though they show small signs of really being into you at times, but ultimately you have a real world feeling that maybe they're not as into you as you are into them. You can contact me at the link below and I can work with you personally on that. Or if you just found this podcast of value to yourself, you can show that appreciation by clicking on the donation link below, and I will talk to you soon.